Let's go live with Jack Kelly. Welcome to the one-of-a-kind LinkedIn live show that will help you with your job search and advancing your career. We will bring in educated career experts who will share their insights and give you inside tips on how to be successful in your job search. Now let's get into today's show with your host, Jack Kelly.
We are so glad to welcome Sonal. This is the international career expert who has clients in almost every continent across the whole world. So it's amazing. So it's not just US. So LinkedIn Live with Jack Kelly is going global. We're going international. And we have Sonal. And not only do we have Sonal, it's a great time. Diwali, right?
Thank you. Yeah, it was Diwali on Saturday. Thank you.
But isn't it like 5 days though?
That's more like maybe you're confusing with Indian weddings.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was like more of a so it's only a 1 day thing, not a whole.
Well, I don't live in India. If I were in India, it would be a pretty big affair. And secondly, with COVID, everything is kind of subdued right now. So.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And the reason also I'm bringing it up too, because it seemed pretty apropos. Because my limited understanding, my very limited understanding, is what more of celebrating the light over dark, right? Is that
correct? There's like all stories, right? I mean, I'm butchering it right now, but there's a good guy and there's a bad guy. The bad guy used to be a good guy, and the good guy was actually a king, and there was jealousy involved. He was banished to the forest. And he escaped and he had a lot of help from people. So it's a lot of teamwork if you think about it. And his return took a while. When he returned, it was a moonless night. There was no moon. So to celebrate, they had lights everywhere. So then it's all about light over evil. And it's also the evil within, not just the evil outside.
Yeah. And it's the reason I feel it was apropos to kind of bring it up, not only because it was a holiday and to broadcast it, is that here in the US, and I think you had mentioned to me also you're seeing in Europe where you're based, is that there's a resurgence of COVID. And with the resurgence of COVID, what I'm concerned about, and I think a lot of people are concerned about here, is that, oh gosh, this is another wave. What does this mean? Is there going to be a lockdown? How do I stay mentally healthy? How do I keep my mindset throughout this tough period? But then also, what do I do in my job search? So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about, hey, now hopefully it's wrong, because also I saw today that when I think it's Moderna, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, that they are also working for a cure, as well as there's some others. So there could be some light there, but just in case, what would you say to people who are like, oh no, another lockdown, stuck at home again, and they just have to deal with this? And as we both know, it's so hard mentally to stay positive.
Yeah. No, I know that for sure. And I'm not going to give you any theory BS. I'm just going to tell you practical. Europe's had a pretty difficult time with it. There's testing, so that's good. But we actually just are in the middle of a second lockdown.
So you're okay. So what's happening there? So you're living through.
So the main thing is, Jack, when you are a parent, the main thing is your kids can go to school or not. Because if your kids cannot go to school, it disrupts everything. It turns it on top of its head because you're not able to work proper hours, or things are upside down. So things were looking pretty good September, October, and then cases went up, which I think is going to happen, Jack. The more people start treating this like it's fine, it's just a flu. I'm going to go to my friend's house. And a lot of that was happening around. So Belgium, the UK, Germany, France, Spain went into the second lockdown. So we're in this lockdown till about early December, I think 3rd December. So restaurants, anything that's non-essential, restaurants, beauty parlors, salons, all of that shut, completely shut. The kids have just returned to school today after 4 weeks of being home. So I can't tell you, like, this conversation, like, is heaven for me. Like, sanity. So there's two theories here. The first theory is it's actually easier at this time because you know what to expect. And that's the school of thought that I belong to. But there are others who feel, oh gosh, like I just went through so much mental anguish, and I am not open minded to think that it could be different this time. In fact, it can't be better, right? So there's those folks who've made up their mind that it's only going to be bad. And guess what? Then you only see bad. Like you don't see any positive in anything. I'm going to put the health risk to the side, because let's not kid ourselves that if we are healthy, we're lucky. Right now, everything's working. You know, if we don't have a functioning body,
Right.
nothing can happen. Forget depression and all that if your body is not working. So in that sense, there's a ton to be grateful for. But I can tell you from experience, this is sooner or later, it's going to happen in some cities or the other in the US. I think it's a matter of time, and it helps to flatten the curve. Not being negative here, just very realistic. Just looking at the science and looking at the data.
Mhm.
So your question is, what can you do?
Yeah, so there are two things I'm thinking of that for people, what I see, I'll give you from my side. What happens when I speak to a lot of job seekers, and I speak to them whether they're in these meetup groups I have, or just people hit me up on LinkedIn, what have you, or they see some of the articles I write, they want to talk about it. Is it's hard for them to stay positive. That with all the negativity out there and the whole way when people are looking for a job, it's so cold, it's so inhumane, it's so rude that you just feel beaten down, and their self-esteem drops, their self-confidence drops. So now when you see the second wave, what I'm worried for people is that how can they mentally cope? Because it's like, okay, it's like, picture this, you're in a boxing ring and you're just getting beat up and beat up and beat up. Like, how do you, like, what do? You don't want to give up, but you're just getting beat up and you don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
like, this is what I mean. How, like, and it's not easy, and it's to give advice, but any suggestions for people who feel, oh man, I don't know if I can make it another week, another
Yeah.
month under lockdown. What could
Yeah.
I do?
Yeah, I totally get you. It's to go back to the analogy of the boxing ring. It's like
Yeah.
another lockdown is like kicking me when I'm down. Like
Yes,
how
exactly.
dare you? That hurts. That's
Exactly.
mean. Um, is it fair? No, life isn't fair.
Hmm.
It is what it is. Um, I have written down 6 super practical tips. Right? I'm a big believer in positivity and mindset and all of
So am
that.
I,
Don't
by the
get
way.
me wrong.
Absolutely.
I also like pragmatism and keeping things real and very tangible,
I
practical.
love this. If you don't mind, I'm going to take notes when you say it, because I have a feeling these are going to be good. So I'm
I hope so.
excited.
I hope so. Thanks for the pressure.
No pressure at all.
So,
They just have to be awesome. They have to be terrific.
yeah, I'll tell you what. First thing, before I get to the points, when you
Yeah.
said, I don't know if I can take it anymore. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I don't know what it takes. Look in the mirror, snap out of it, slap yourself, whatever. Yes, you can. If I'm breathing, Jack, I'm alive. I'm already better off. You know how many folks have passed away this year? Looking at some American celebrities this year who've passed away, you can say too soon. It was beyond that time.
Mhm.
You're freaking alive. Okay. I can't stress this enough. You have breath in your lungs. First of all, I'm just starting with this little yogi thing. Do something about it. Rather than moan and complain, do something about it. You're one of the lucky ones. You're in most of your audiences, I know, in the US, you've got a roof on your head. Can't understand how much we have to be grateful for. I'm talking to you, Jack. It's 2020. If this lockdown were to happen in 1990, can you imagine the sheer mental trauma of not being able to connect with people?
Right.
Thank God we have the internet. So first things first, don't forget the basics and small little things that you're grateful for. I know people say gratitude, attitude of gratitude, but practice it before you kind of brush it off. Try it before you deny it. And now let me get into the stuff.
But
Okay.
before you go to this, I think the first thing you said was really brilliant, because, and I agree with you. What you're saying is this, you have to take things into perspective, and that so many people have it so tough. You have people who unfortunately passed away from it, people who are suffering through it. I have somebody on my team who's worried and waiting to hear back in a test because she's feeling just dreadful, afraid what's going to happen. You have people who have uh, health issues already and they're terribly afraid of getting it. So if you're healthy and you're okay, you have a roof over your head, you know what? You got to appreciate that. You got to first look at it and say, hey, let me be grateful for the things I have and put things in perspective. And I hear that from a lot of people. It changes their perspective on life. You know, when you have this, it changes their outlook.
Perspective is everything,
Yeah.
Jack. I love it that you said that. And here's where I come in. A lot of people who are listening to this are going to be listening with their North America lens. Okay.
Okay.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. In countries like India, etc., where people are on minimum wage, which is ridiculous per day, they've had to go back home to their village, and we're working a lot to support nonprofits. It is madness, right? Because these are not even people where they can get tested easily, and then they're spreading it everywhere, and then the family member passes away. Oh gosh, there's so much to look at, and
Yeah.
you'll always look at it with your own lens. Never ever forget that it's still, by sheer default, you're in the top 5% in the world, just by having a laptop or a phone and you're listening to this on the internet. Having said that, the first thing I want to say, which I wrote down, and I'm a big believer of it, and I'm going to give you a shameless plug here at some point, which
Go
is
for it.
about my podcast, and I'll come to that in a second. I'm a huge believer in Stoicism. What can you control? What can you not control? Can you control COVID? No. Can I control that it doesn't happen to me? To some extent. I will not say entirely, because there's a lot of people who've done everything by the book and still got it. But, wash my hands, never step out without a mask, etc. Focus on what you can control. And then what can you control with regards to job? Can you control your time? Heck yes. Heck yes. I'm going to get real with you, as always, Jack. I was pretty real with you in our last chat, and then you were like, I'm recording this, and I'm like, oh. So here, what I'm saying is for public consumption. I've been unemployed twice with restructuring, and lost my position, and in one of the cases, McKinsey came into the picture. When you see McKinsey in your office, just assume it's going to be a bloodbath, right? And that's exactly what happened in my company. Downsizing, cost cutting, etc., etc. So both those times were hard, because you're, like you said, it's a gut punch and you need to get back on your feet. I made so many mistakes, and one of the mistakes I made was, at some point I stopped believing that I'm good enough, and I would just do basic things like apply to 2 jobs today, I'm done. And I would binge the crap out of Downton Abbey. Like, Downton Abbey for me is my association of unemployment, and I relished it, and I made no regrets. But I will never get that time back. Okay, so can you focus on your time? Yeah, you can. And it doesn't mean, when people say looking for a job is a full-time job, yes and no. Yes, it means there's a commitment. There should be some rituals, and I don't like the word should, but put some rituals in place that no matter what happens, when you get up in the morning, the first thing you did, like Elizabeth Gilbert says it, the famous author who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. Somebody asked her, what are your tips on how to work from home? And she's like, I've been working from home for 25 years. She said, I have 6 words: get dressed and make your bed. Start with that. Let's start with that, because when I used to do that, I felt like I've achieved something today. I've done something right, even if I'm like in undiagnosed clinical depression, but at least that I've got right? I may have like laundry piled everywhere. So what? So focus on what you can control. Look at those rituals. Are you looking at opportunities? And some people demonize applying to jobs, and I think that there's different things. Put your eggs in multiple baskets. Don't just apply to jobs, because when you do that, you are completely giving the power away, and you're hoping they'll call you back. And hope is not a strategy. It doesn't work. But if you were to do that, and let's say you schedule 1 or 2 coffee mornings or coffee chats per day, every week. So 5 coffee mornings minimum every week. I feel a little bit better about myself. And who are these coffee chats with? It's first of all easy. Don't get out of bed if you don't want to. Put on your pajamas. Nobody cares. Like, for example, Jack, you don't know what I'm wearing in the bottom half. I'm dressed up for you. But it's so damn easy now, right? So these coffee chats can be with anyone. Ideally, yes, targeted, of course, in the companies you want to work in. And it could be a friend of a friend, doesn't matter. There's a lot of pressure on it should be with decision makers. It doesn't happen right out the gate. It takes time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It could be with somebody in a company you want to work in. It could be somebody who you don't know but got introduced, via, in French you say via someone who knows someone who knows someone. It could be another job seeker. Guess what? Misery loves company. Share it. They say about division of sorrow and multiply your joy, right? So just do that. That helps you because you're not alone anymore. And that's a big problem in today's world. Not only is it unemployment, but it's lonely unemployment. So it's actually a double, that's a double challenge to have. And this is a way that you can control like your calendar. Just like imagine you're working in a company and you're like, okay, what's my agenda looking like today? Because I'm going to go to bed depending on if I have a 7 a.m. meeting or if I have an 11 meeting. But I have a meeting. It forces me to actually show up, get dressed, and not just be sorry for myself and munch, gulp Nutella like it's going out of it's going out of fashion.
Yeah, I like what you're saying because it makes so much sense. What I'm hearing is that, hey, if you find yourself in between roles, or even if you have a job that you hate and you want to do something different, you have to really treat it with a game plan, a plan of attack, an action plan. You can't just say, I give up. You can't feel just sad about yourself, lament your fate. You have to really take bold actions. It is what it is, and you got to do something about it. And sometimes it's those little steps. It's just get out of bed at a certain time every day, make your bed, have your cup of coffee, decide, all right, here's what I'm going to do today, and have a checklist to do it. So this way it keeps, I think what you're saying, this by doing that, instead of ruminating about all the negativity, you're shifting your mindset towards, okay, what can I do that's positive? How can I move my life, my career forward? And just start chipping away at it every day, every day. And then you didn't mention this, but I imagine you feel this way too, is by doing this too, then your mind is more focused on achieving positive results as opposed to just dwelling on all the negatives that bring you down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the two more things I'm going to add here. One is the example I love to take is if you don't like where the car is going, get out of the passenger seat and sit in the driver's seat. Take back control.
Take control.
I feel in control when I'm driving, honestly. And if I'm not happy with the way my husband is going, and I'm like, this is a shortcut. Do you want to drive? Actually, yeah, I do.
And you do that, and you switch all the way.
Obviously, we stop because I'm like, oh no, that route has less traffic. Daddy. So take back control.
Wait. I don't want to go on a tangent, but how are your children like driving age or no?
No,
Okay, so take it from a parent who, if you feel not in control, when you teach your kids how to drive and you're on the passenger side, oh my God.
I can't imagine what.
Oh my God, Sonal, you have no idea. Like I try to be, because I have to be the cool, calm one, because I'm the dad and they're driving. But inside my heart is like this. Oh my God, because everything, you come so close to like the parked cars and smashing into it. And this is what you have to look forward to. So I know what you mean. So I like being in the driver's seat. I'm with you. I want to be in control. And the way I look at it, hey, if I end up getting into a car fender bender, okay, but it was on my terms. And I can live with that.
Yeah.
As opposed to letting someone else do it.
Yeah, no, you take accountability. And what happens is when you take accountability because you're driving, and if there was a fender bender, it's easier to accept.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, no, otherwise I'll blame. And the blaming thing, the thing is, it's there's a pattern. If you're going to be blaming, guess what? You're also blaming other, it's not only COVID. COVID is not an excuse always, because a lot of people are using COVID and this is a very painful thing to say. And I don't want to but I do, obviously, the idea of our chat today is make people think. And COVID is not an excuse for inaction. COVID is not an excuse for bad behavior. I'm sure you've seen your share of it, where people are lashing out, etc. I'm like, actually, you know what? This was always there, and now it's manifested because now, it's boiling up, and now it's come to the surface. But having said that, one more thing I wanted to add related to this point, which was take back control of your time. treated like the asset it is, because guess what? It's an unlimited asset. We all have a certain, end date. Poof, that sounded morbid. But the other thing I
But it's
wanted
a
to
reality. Can I tell you, it's a
oh, yeah,
reality.
it's a
And that's
reality.
something people have to keep in mind because this doesn't go on forever and you have to make the most of your time right now.
Exactly. And speaking of, I love that you said that. Speaking of the fact that it doesn't go on forever, one aspect that I disagree with, which people say looking for a job is a full-time job. Yes, it is a full-time job, but it doesn't have to be the way it used to be, which is, for example, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. It doesn't have to be that way. You got to be smart about it. Now, let's say I'm at it and I'm very intentional and I'm dedicated, whether it's my coffee chats, LinkedIn time, social, all of that stuff that I'm doing. Let's say it's 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and then I'm done. Guess what? I'm done. And I can do stuff that I never had time to do before. And that is the beauty of it. My kids were a lot more little when I was unemployed the last time. And I saw my 3-year-old, now he's going to be 8, but a lot more than I would have if the nanny had been there. I mean, I'm not saying anything wrong with parents having nannies, and I've had my share of it, but I would have only seen him at bedtime. And certain words. So cherish, whether it's children, cherish hobbies, personal interests that you wanted to cultivate, because this time will never come back. So
It's interesting you say that because I think a lot of people feel guilty if they're not just on the job hunt all the time.
Guilt comes from
right?
the guilt. I'll tell you what, a lot of the guilt comes from, I will be happy when. And you are, what is the word? You are shifting joy to the future on the condition that this will happen or that will happen. I'll be happy when I've lost 20 kilos. I'll be happy when I've learned to drive, for example, because then I can do it. Till then, I'm not happy. So you're basically you're not giving yourself permission, and nobody needs to give that permission to you except for you. Now, if there is guilt, it needs to be addressed. Somebody famous said the trigger. What is the trigger for making you feel guilty? The trigger is always the teacher. The trigger is always the teacher. That guilt is coming from somewhere. At some point, it was looked down upon or frowned upon if you were to do stuff for yourself. I think it's great if you do stuff for yourself, because when you show up the next time, you're even better. You're like completely charged up. And it's like saying I'm feeling guilty because I charge my cell phone. Dude, if you don't charge your cell phone, it's not going to be 100%.
Yeah. Do you follow Zen Buddhism?
No.
Because what you were saying in terms of not looking towards the future, not just focusing on the future, that's when you'll be happy. Because one of the tenets, and I'm not going to profess to be an expert at it, but with kind of Zen is that you're focusing on the here and now. You're in the moment.
Because and I kind of believe it, because my sister's into Buddhism a lot. The here and now is all you have.
Exactly. So you're focused. So you don't obsess over what's going to happen 10 steps down the road. You obsess, what am I doing today? What am I doing right now to better myself, to move forward,
and one
to
of those
find that new job?
And one of those questions that I can't stand, and companies love asking, what is your 5-year plan?
Mm-hmm.
Who freaking knows, man? If somebody had asked me this in 2015,
Exactly.
I wouldn't know that. I'd be like,
exactly.
sitting my pajamas in November in 2020. So yeah, that's a big one for me. And another very interesting one, which I have seen coming from experience, Jack, because, we were chatting before, and you know that I was looking for work in the last big recession of 2009, and I had just finished a rather expensive MBA.
Yeah, if you could share your experience, because that's
I don't know how much time we're going to have, but one of the things.
That's all right.
One of the
it's
things.
A Monday, people, you know what? They're hanging out. They'll listen. They'll have their coffee.
Do we have people listening? Because I wonder if you have any comments, because I'd love to see.
You know what? I wasn't looking at the comments because I was focusing on the conversation. Because to me, I know on your shows, you draw a lot of the comments. For me, what I've been trying to do is just let people like yourself just share, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then really share your knowledge.
I do want to share, but it's also interesting when people are like, oh, this is resonating.
Okay.
Lawrence, can I just say, sorry, Lawrence in the house. she's a dear friend. Lawrence, Shweta, can I just call them out?
Go, sure.
If you don't like oh my God, we have lovely people here. Greg, Nancy, Joanne, Uh,
All right, if you see a question, because my glasses are off, so I can't see it. So
so
if
Shweta said, passenger seat gives me goosebumps because I have claustrophobia. No, I love that. What I was going to say was the MBA. Yeah, this is a very interesting time, and I mean it. This is a very interesting time for job seekers. Anybody who's listening, who's a recruiter, you're going to know what I'm talking about. When you're on the company side of things, this is a great time to find talent because you're looking around, right? You may not be able to hire right away. You're building an extremely agile and ready pipeline. The moment this is over, and it will be over, this is a blip in the economy. The economy is much more than you and I. And I noticed this 2008, 2009 sucked, horrible. 2010, 2011 picked up again. And guess what? The first people to leave the company are people who can't stand their job and can't stand their boss and hate the company culture. It sucks the soul out of them. And the good companies know that. And they have their eye on those guys and they can offer them a bigger increase in salary, etc. So, what does this mean for someone listening today? Look around because there's a lot of smart companies out there who continue to invest in their top talent. These are companies that have very strong leadership and strong HR, and they believe that people are everything. Now, how do they know that? It's very simple. These are the positions that are being advertised. I'm not saying apply like everyone else. You can apply. It's a little bit of a lottery. I have clients who've got jobs by applying at director level, and it wasn't like they did some fancy schmancy networking. They got the job, but that should not be the only approach. There it's now here one needs to be very intentional. I think Lauren, if she's watching today, Lauren knows this, and she talks about the hidden job market and she explains it really well, and that's what I also do, but I do it in a slightly different way. uh, Focus on the strong ties and the weak ties. What does that mean? Strong ties are people in your warm network, like you give them a call, hey, you want to go for a movie? Yeah, in non-COVID times they'll pick up the phone and they want to chat. Cold network, you haven't spoken in a while, it's been a few years. Hey, it's been a while, how are you doing? They'll pick up the phone, but you hesitate to call them, right? That's your cold network. Now there's a
can
lot
we
of
talk about
nature.
that for a second? Because that's where I think so many people have challenges, particularly if they're introverts. See, as being a recruiter for 25 years, I have no qualms about picking up the phone and making a cold call and talking to people. But most normal people feel weird about doing that. What
Do you
would
know
you
why?
suggest? Like, what should they do? How can they do it? Because to you, you're very outgoing. You're very gregarious. You come across as an extrovert. A lot of people don't feel comfortable doing that. What can they do?
You're very right. And I think that being extroverted or introverted doesn't have that much to do with it. It's more about how will I be perceived? And I might be perceived as a person who wants something. And nobody likes that in the beginning, particularly if the relationship is not very strong. Like, oh, that person will tell his girlfriend, John reached out. Oh, it's been 5 years. Guess what? He's asking for a job. So John doesn't want that guy to feel that way, right? So it's more about what are some things that I can connect on and genuinely connect, not because I have an agenda. And that is really hard. And that's one of my tips in my 6 things that I was talking about. How about you reach out and you connect and you don't have an agenda? That's very interesting. Sonal, this is such a waste of time. I know you're thinking that, Jack. But the best time to dig a well is before you get thirsty. We talk about that a lot in my LinkedIn Live. You're reigniting a relationship that may have been a little bit cold, a little bit dead for a while, and you're reigniting it. You can't just blatantly put kerosene on it. It's going to be on fire. Your face is going to be on fire. You start very slow, right? I love the metaphors here.
Yeah.
Driving, setting
Yeah.
yourself on fire.
Yeah, this is getting dangerous. You're kicking
you
your husband
start
out of the car and taking the car and leaving him on the side of the road. Kerosene is blowing up. So this is,
So start very little, right? And there's usually it helps to have an angle. If they're posting on social media, listen, I see that you posted on this book. I love this book. Oh yeah, what did you? So you're reigniting. So it's like, imagine you're meeting somebody like literally at a shopping mall, and you've seen them after a few years. You're not going to immediately say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Maybe not immediately. Why? Because we're a little proud as people. We all are. And if you're not, good for you. But I am. And I do care about my reputation and what people say about me. So in the beginning, it's like, let me have a combination of other job seekers that I want to reach out to, or companies that I know are hiring. And I have a friend who has a friend who knows someone who knows someone. Everybody, it's a small world. We're all separated by 6 degrees of separation. And then start building it. It's not overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. This is the second time I'm saying this in our live stream. And focus on nurturing that relationship from scratch, right? And Lauren talked
So
about it.
what you're saying, wait, just so I understand. So what you're really saying, let's say I'm calling you up, instead of saying, hey, Sonal, I lost my job. Can you help me find a job? It'll be more of, hey, how you doing? How's it going? How are the kids? The pleasantries, let the conversation go. But then
Let the
maybe
conversation flow. I'll tell you what,
then,
let the
and
conversation
then you kind of
flow.
work it in.
Yeah, you don't even work at it. It's very
Okay.
it's very organic. When you let the conversation flow and you make it about them, you make it about them. It's not about you. The spotlight is not on you. Imagine it's a stage and the spotlight is on them. You want to know everything about them. By the end of the conversation, you know how old the kids are, what job they're working,
Right.
or what are the challenges they're facing at work. Maybe at some point you can help them. And that's one of the points I talk about in my 6 points, which is number 4: give without an agenda. Just give. Just give. I can't tell you how unbelievable this is as a strategy. Kindness is a strategy. Empathy is a strategy. I'm going to talk about this because I didn't
So
say it.
so by doing that, are you saying that by doing that, eventually the conversation will turn, and then you'll say, oh, Jack, hey,
Exactly.
how are
I'm
you
coming.
doing? Is that,
Exactly. I'm
yeah.
coming to that. So when you do that, um, hey, Jack, we didn't talk about you. How are you?
Yeah.
Thanks for asking. All's good. It's a little bit challenging right now with this. What happened? Because you spent so much time. Let's say you spend 55 minutes listening to me. I am sociologically, this is how we are all wired. I am now wired to care about you and care about your outcome. Why? Because you took the time out of your day to listen to me. And maybe you helped me out. Maybe I have a supplier who's messed up and you know someone who's a better supplier and you gave the contact information. Guess what? That's value right out the gate. And you're like, oh, okay, what can I do to help? You didn't even have to ask. There's a way to do it, and there's a classy way to do it, and there's a cheap, I need it. There's nothing wrong with, I'm making it sound like I'm judgmental. There's nothing wrong with it. But we all know
Right.
that the extra mile, there's an expression, the extra mile
Mhm.
is always uncrowded. It's not crowded.
Now, so Nancy shot a question about, I'll paraphrase, like, I feel uncomfortable kind of doing it. I guess you just have to try it. I imagine would be your suggestion,
Okay.
just to kind of
Yeah.
go through it, that it might feel
And
comfortable at first.
I love that, Nancy. First of all, Nancy, I'm sorry. I'm a bit allergic to the word try. You either do it or you don't do it. I'm a Yoda. I'm a Yoda
Yeah.
person. Yoda's my guy. There is no try. There is
Yeah.
but do.
Yeah.
So think about anything, Nancy, that you've done the first time. Anything in the world. Like, let your imagination play with you. The first time is always going to be uncomfortable. Always. Whether it's riding a bike or the first day on the job, or you're learning a language. When I was learning French the first time, bah, ça c'est merde. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this. This is complete rubbish. It gets better with time. So it is just like an acquired skill. And the more you start thinking of networking like a cheap, sleazy thing, the more uncomfortable it's going to feel. But the more you start thinking of networking as offering help, I have completely switched my brain, Jack, on I don't like the word because networking has a very negative
It
analogy.
does, right? People hear that, they just hate that. They hate that word.
When anything makes me uncomfortable, anything, I focus attention away from me and I make it about the other person. Anytime I've done that, it has worked. And karma is not mysterious. Karma is alive and kicking, and what goes around comes around. So things like kindness and empathy, we're talking about it in 2020. This should be a topic for all ages. But somehow I think when we have grown a little bit older and social media and all of that stuff, I think we've forgotten old-fashioned things we learned from our grandparents, kindness and empathy and being considerate, listening to the other person, all of that stuff. I'm surprised that we all as grown-ups, all of us, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, need to be reminded about it. But I'll tell you what, I have a podcast that came out 3 weeks ago, and I have 2 episodes in there where I'm speaking with senior people from literally all around the world: United States, Lebanon, Singapore, India. And in 2 specific podcasts that are out, they spoke about this, that, hey, I'm not religious, but I do want to say that piece of kindness that I did and I forgot about it, it actually resulted in me getting the CMO position. And with the gift of time, I realized that was correct. But back then when it happened, I didn't pay attention to it. So it's a long game. When you're kind and you're helping other people, you're not going to be going and doing it thinking, Nancy, that it didn't work out. You don't know that yet. You don't know that yet. It takes time. You're building.
That's really helpful. Hey, I know you're going through those tips, but just I'm curious, given that you have an international array of clients, is there a lot of differences between the different countries, or at the end of the day, it's very similar?
Very similar.
Doesn't really matter whether you're in Belgium where you are, you're here in New Jersey where I am right today.
People are people. And everybody has the same insecurities. Everybody. How am I going to look when I'm unemployed? How am I going to look like when I ask for a favor? What am I going to tell my kids? I can't stand my boss. Like, these are like,
universal truths almost. Like, we all go through it.
I don't like my mother-in-law. So these
Is she watching this? Hopefully she's not watching this.
I'm joking.
Oh, no. She's kidding. She's kidding. She just texted me. She loves you.
No, what I mean is, it's
best mother-in-law ever.
I'm just joking because it's one of those things that I've lived in different cultures, in interesting, completely different cultures from where I come from. And there are certain things that always like work. Whether it's the weather, whether it's, my husband makes fun of my mom. So it's like these things always create a little, so if you can build rapport in that sense, and focus attention away from you on how you can help the person. And maybe the person doesn't need help, but guess what? We all need a listening ear right now more than ever. And maybe you can provide that. And you don't go with the intention of what am I going to get out of it? Just give, but at the same time, track it. Track it. It's been a while, and they said they'll do something for you, and it's been a couple of weeks. Hey, I know you're busy, and I'm sure things are nuts right now. And just wanted to follow up. So you're always kind of closing the loop. But imagine if you do this 5 to 10 times a week.
Yeah. No. Would you say a phone call or a Zoom call? Does it matter?
I am a big believer in visual, because
I think at this stage I would do Zoom calls.
I would do Zoom.
Right.
I mean, ideally, if we were in non-COVID times, and if the person is in the same city, I'd get coffee and I'd buy them coffee.
Right. But now it's.
But if you can't, then I would not do like Zoom off camera, and I wouldn't do like a regular call, just because the connection is a lot less.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any other comments, but I have a couple more points I want to.
Yeah, let's go. I want to hear this. So far they're awesome.
So quick recap. Focus on what you can control and what you can't, the Stoicism thing. Manage your time, all of those coffee chats that we talked about. So you have that sense of achievement at end of the day or end of the week. The third was, not all companies have a knee-jerk reaction. Focus on the ones that are continuing to hire, and build relationships with people there. And by the way, not everybody listening today may be looking for a job, Jack. Some people might be like, I'm fine right now, but these are not skills you want to learn only on the fly. You also want to know this stuff in peaceful times, so that when the time is right, you know how to do it, what's your plan of attack, etc. Number 4, we said, was give without an agenda. Just give, and give with a good heart, right? Without thinking, what am I getting back or what is in return? Because then it's not pure giving. The 5th is engage with thought leaders, particularly who are active on LinkedIn. Engage with them publicly, always, if you have something to say. And I'm telling you this from experience, that I've made a lot of mistakes. What does this mean? I connect with someone and I've never engaged with their stuff, but I'm a huge fan, right? So then I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Like I'm always worried. I'm like a little dog, like wagging my tail. And, they get a bit creeped out and they're like, they don't respond. And I'm like, God, what is wrong with me? So if you make that a more public thing, then it's kind of more acceptable. So engage as much as you can publicly. And there is an art to engaging with them. There is an art to writing a comment, not a thumbs up, not a heart, not emoji, not good post. That is not the way to do it. It's like imagine, you're in a networking event and everyone's chit chatting and you're like, yeah. Everyone's like, what the heck is that? You have something to say. You have something to say, and don't put too much pressure on yourself that it has to sound, parfait, completely and eloquent. But have a point of view and don't be prepared to show it. Whether it's a devil's advocate point of view or agreeing. If you agree and add something to it because you have a brain, so use it and see how can this help the person who's reading without again putting the attention on me. Look at me, talk to me, and this is my point of view. Hashtag, this is my personal hashtag. No. Hello. There's something called LinkedIn etiquette, and you just hijacked somebody's post. Guess what? They're not going to like you in the future. They're not going to respond to your messages. But make it about them, right? And genuinely give a compliment. We all love receiving compliments. Jack, we started this live stream today. You gave me a compliment, and I'm like, this is nice. It's just this is the way I'm wired. So then pay a compliment.
Can I add to your point? When I do these things, I'm being authentic. I'm not BSing. Maybe that's also to add to part of those tips that you said, because I think if you're not authentic when you say these things, people kind of pick up on it too. But when they know you're real,
LinkedIn has a very high BS radar.
They should have that as a feature, right? A BS meter that you see it go,
and you can smell it.
Yeah,
you can smell it thousands of miles. So what I'm saying is engage on LinkedIn publicly, and then your aim should always be to take the conversation off of LinkedIn. Like I have made friends with this. Engage on LinkedIn publicly, and people like Lauren, etc. And I don't know, hopefully she's still watching, but she's become a really, really good friend of mine because the conversation went off of LinkedIn.
How do you do that? That's a really interesting concept.
Because eventually that is how you make a sale. If you talk to someone who's in sales, because hiring at the end of the day is also sales, whether you think of it that way or not, but it's like you're in a networking event. Let's keep it simple. You're at a party and you're looking at this girl. I'm not saying you, but and you're like, I think I'd like to get to know her.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like looking at her and she's looking at you. You think there might be some interest. And then you're saying, hey, you muster up the courage and you're saying, nice to meet you. I'm Jack. I'm Joanna. Oh, how nice. How long have you been at this party? Da-di-da-di-da. You chit chat. Do you want to see each other again? Heck yes. How are you going to do that? You get away from the party. It's exactly the same as LinkedIn. You want to engage with each other. Maybe you have one party and two parties and three parties, and they're like, hey, you want to get coffee sometime? I'd love to. That's what I mean by getting the conversation off of LinkedIn, because it's always in the public eye and you're like, I think I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. And this is what I'd love to talk to you about. The devil is in the details. The more specific, the better. And not.
Well, what do we do? What do we do now that it's even hard to get a cup of coffee depending on where you live because of COVID, So would it be a phone call?
You have your coffee and I have my coffee.
Oh, like a virtual, okay, we'll have a virtual call. Let's.
For now it's
okay.
virtual. But if you're having virtual coffee on Zoom, you're off of LinkedIn. And that's what we want.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Depending on the platform. That's what they say to salespeople, and it should be the same for hiring and job seekers. You want to get the conversation off of LinkedIn. So always start with engaging publicly. Hey, I think, she's interesting. I'd like to get to know her. Always in a public. Because if you immediately go to the private thing, chances are you'll get a slap in the face. So we got kerosene on our face. We got...
we get slapped.
We got slapped. It's a very violent LinkedIn life.
Yeah, we're carjacking the car. So so this is like a very aggro conversation here.
And the last thing I want to say is...
I don't know. Now I'm scared. Like, what kind of violence are we what's going to happen now?
This one is total zen.
Okay.
The last thing I want to say is be so mindful of what you consume. It's so amazing. When I say consume, I mean three things. CAF, C-A-F. What is CAF? It's not a word. Don't worry. I'm a big aficionado when it comes to acronyms. I'm like an acronym nutcase. C stands for content. Be very particular about the content you're consuming right now. And then when I say content, if you're sitting on TikTok or Instagram all day long, but it's not serving you, hello, you just wasted hours of your life. And if you multiply those hours, it turns out to be days. Like there are days, of my life, Jack, that I'm never going to get back. Do you remember those, there's an app called Tasty, and they have a camera on top and they show how a dish is made. I was obsessed with that, I think from 2017 to 2019. It's like so quick the way a dish is made. And I was like, oh, let me see another one. Oh, let me see. Guess what? I've been on this app for 2 hours. And if I multiply that by the number of days. So just be mindful of the content you consume. And, if you're consuming things like political posts, for example, are they helping you right now? So focus on what you're consuming, because content is also like food. Speaking of food, that's F. So CAF, CAF. I jumped to the F.
Yeah.
F is food. And here I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to do anything about, I'm not going to talk about nutrition, but I am going to say that there are days when I know I'm feeling a little good about myself because I know I made the effort to have a banana in the morning or an apple in the morning and all of that stuff. So it's like, you don't need a doctor to tell you this, but you are what you eat. So if I have my chips in the morning, I feel like crap the rest of the day. And that has a big effect on my mood. So, be mindful of your food and your fruits and vegetables, particularly in today's environment where we're not always outside 100% of the time. That's F. The A is advice. Be mindful of the advice and who's giving you the advice. And remember, you're always looking at it from their lens. And people who tell you it's not been done before, Google will never accept you. You think you're going to get into Netflix? You just be careful of that. You want to, you are the sum of, who said that? I think it was John Rohn. You are the sum of 5 people that you spend most time with. And it's worth reflecting, who are these 5 people? What are they feeding you? If they're feeding you with negativity, it might be time to distance yourself from their message. Maybe you can't distance yourself from them. Maybe they're in the same household, for example, but you can distance yourself from this message by, having a sort of strong, impenetrable shield. There we are with the violence again. So you are what you consume. So consume, choose wisely, right? As Indiana Jones, they said, that dude in Indiana Jones was like, you have chosen wisely, you have chosen poorly. So your content you're consuming, the advice that you're seeking, do you really want to know advice from them, or do you really want to, you know what you want to do, but still, seeking advice? I'm very interested when people do that. But you know what you want, like your gut is telling you. Why are you? So be careful of that. A and F is obviously, the food and the fitness associated to that.
So that's really good tips, because really, if you kind of wrap them together, it's really all about self-empowerment. It's really taking control of your life. It's a roadmap to say, hey, you know what? I got to make something happen. Whether you're looking for a job, you're looking to advance your career, you're looking just to better yourself. It's too easy just to not do it. It's too easy to binge watch Netflix. It's too easy just to goof off.
And it's easy. It's also easy to complain.
Oh yeah, that's the easiest thing in the world to do, right? Criticize, complain, bemoan your fate.
Because you're
easiest.
Not, you're not held.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's a problem with asking for advice. And it's very sneaky, Jack. When people ask for advice, should I do this or should I do that? And I'm one of those annoying people who will never give a straight answer. But what do you want to do? What they want is, they want to know, should they do A or B? And the reason is, it's very sneaky, because if A doesn't work out and you told them to do A, they can blame you for it.
Of course, yeah.
So there's an accountability problem there.
That's great. Can I just fire off a couple of questions that came in? Now, one, it sounds like you kind of touched upon, where Diane was asking, is it acceptable to reach out to your contacts at the company and ask them about the position? So I think you touched on it, but maybe you could go a little bit. And this goes back to having, being comfortable to reach out.
Because the operative word here, Diane, the operative word is contacts. Now, whether they are strong connections or weak connections, it doesn't matter. We are in let's not kid ourselves, okay? We are in a global freaking pandemic. The last pandemic that happened was in 1918. A lot of people didn't make it. So none of us was alive. Now, this is not a small little recession. 2009 feels like a small recession compared to this because I remember 2009 when I graduated, it was like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. It was mostly Europe and the US. This one is the whole freaking world, right? So, Diane, if you know someone, I would definitely take advantage of it and also look at the tone, right? Look at the tone with which you approach them rather than immediately going for the kill and saying, hey, I need a job. You can always be like, you can call it small talk, but I would also help to frame it in a way, um, if you can try and speak with them over the phone or whatever. So they don't feel, because otherwise, one feels a bit used. So it all depends on how you ask. It's not what you ask, it's how you ask most of the time. That makes a difference in the, like we do in interviews. It's not the content always, it's the delivery. Like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I would definitely take advantage of, because these are assets in your network, and you're like, hey, I looked at this position. But would they refer you if they haven't heard from you in 5 years and you immediately reached out saying, hey, John, I saw this position, can I take a little bit of, it can be, it can even be a deal, it can be a phone call. But I think that separates you from other Dianes of the world who have also seen the same position and applied, because you are now in a little bit stronger standing, if you know what I mean, in the person's eyes who was approached.
Michael is asking, what do I do? You mentioned about LinkedIn to kind of find people who you want to connect with. What would you recommend? Do you write? I'm paraphrasing what you're saying. Do you kind of try to position yourself as an expert? Do you ask for the help? Do you ask to me? He's kind of just wants the clarification. How can I really get on that person's radar?
Okay. I'm gonna see if I see his question.
We're getting some questions that people have hit up, like Christine, and she's sharing it with me.
Oh, yeah, got it. There, yeah. Michael's question is, how do I get seen by the right people?
Yeah, like how, once you know, like, hey, I want to get on this person's radar, as you mentioned before, what's like the best way to do it? Is it just sending a note, just maybe making it a long-term project to slowly?
I'll tell you what I do. This is my personal approach and it's worked beautifully. I follow people for a while before I connect with them. I don't know why. I like I like seeing what they're up to, their public persona, and I kind of track them and I stalk them. But this is LinkedIn. It's okay. Publicly, you're stalking a lot of people. And it can happen that some people, I'm not saying everyone, some people are posting at a certain time during the day. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's say they're kind of famous, right? If I see that there's a pattern, and if I want to be seen by them, I want to try and, I'm not saying, you go nuts and you're surgically attached to your phone the whole time, but I try and see how can I post within the first 5 to 10 minutes? How can I post a comment in the first 5 to 10 minutes? This is a very tactical thing that I have seen work with large influencers that I wanted to follow. And the posts are going to be good because I like what they're doing. I like what they're saying. It's going to speak to me. I'm going to write specifically, again, the art of good comments, right? What you liked about the post. And add a little bit of your 2 cents. That 2 cents is the value you bring to this. And then also genuinely compliment that. You do this over a period of time. And when I say period, it may only be 3-4 days, but you're doing it on a regular basis. Then you hit them up and you send them a connection request. And by the way, I'm going to post on this tomorrow in my LinkedIn.
Yeah, you know what? You should write this all. This is great to put them down. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. If you're on desktop, the thing I'm about to say is not a problem for you. But if you're on your mobile, there's a huge design defect with user experience on LinkedIn, because when you see someone's profile and the first thing it says is connect, you guess what? You tap it and the connection request is gone. So please don't do that, because you're like millions of people who've sent the connection request and it gets ignored, particularly when people are over 30,000. They don't may not even be able to accept it because there's a connection limit. But the smart ones out there who are over 30,000 have kept a little space. I hope I'm making sense because I'm nerding out a little bit. I saw Kevin D. Turner watching and he's going to know what I'm talking about. The smart ones will have more followers, but fewer connections because they want to connect with the right people in their space. And so what you need to do is when you see someone's name, you need to click on their name, and then there are these 3 dots on the right hand side. You need to click on those 3 dots and then it'll say send a personalized invite, please. please send them a personalized invite. And don't be like everyone else, because when you send a personalized invite, the chances of them accepting it are very high. Because the question was from John. The question was from
I think that was Michael, the last one.
Michael,
Right.
because they're going to recognize Michael, they're going to recognize your name, and I'll make it a little bit easier for you. I have a little formula that I think you can use that will help you. Again, it's a completely nutty word. It's an acronym. WIC.
You like your acronyms.
I love my acronyms. I'm a big nerd. So WIC Miat. That's WICMIAAT, which makes zero sense. WIC Miat. What does that mean? WIC. What's in common? Establish immediately what do you have in common. I see that we have this person, Hannah, in common. Hannah is amazing. Attention has gone away from me, right? And I see that she's a fan of Hannah also. Great. What's in common? Done. Make it authentic. MIAAT. Make it authentic. I've been following your work for a while, and I have to say, I love the posts that you are creating. Make it authentic and about them. And I particularly, my favorite post of yours so far, John, was when you talked about X, Y, and Z. You've got to be specific, because when you're specific, the devil is in the details. You're not like everyone else who's like, I see that we both worked at GE. I think it's a great time to connect, and I would look forward to adding you to my network. Now, if I have 300,000 followers, and if I receive a request like that, I have choice. I can ignore, like swipe left on Tinder, ignore. I don't even know like right or left, because I'm married. I was never in the Tinder generation. It's like ignore. But if this person is interesting and they've done their homework, chances are of being accepted by Michael, by John for Michael is 100% for me. If you do it right, if you do it the right way.
That's fantastic. And this is not a question, it's more of a statement that I guess you're being now dubbed the Empress of acronyms. So I guess that goes on your LinkedIn, bio that you're Empress. I like that of acronym. So you're an international career guru plus an Empress of acronyms. This is good. Wow, this is an exciting day.
I'll
a lot of titles. You're like royalty.
It's Monday. You have nice words to say. I'll take it.
Well, this was amazing. Believe it or not, this was like an hour already. You dropped some knowledge. This was amazing.
Time flies. I didn't realize.
Seriously, this was really good. You gave some great, I love that you had the 6 tips. I love that you talked about yourself and shared your experience. And, it was a lot of positivity, and that's what people need now. So I'm really glad, because as we started off the conversation, it's looking a little scary, but we could overcome it. We could deal with it. We could make, we could make the best of it and use it to our advantage. And I really love how you gave people inspiration. You gave actionable ideas, which is good. It's not just platitudes. You gave, here's like 6 things to do, not just buck up and hang in there, but 6 things in addition to all the other stuff you offer too. So that was terrific.
I just want to say one last thing before we go, because I need at least 10 kilos. Jack, I don't know what that is in pounds, but I have to lose a lot of kilos with the whole COVID and lockdown, and I'm obviously not taking care of myself. I'm not going to lose weight, or I'm not going to get a 6-pack by watching YouTube videos, LinkedIn lives, and reading books. I'm going to do it when I do it. Like, I'm going to lose the stuff when I do it. So if you want change to happen, make the time between thinking, inspiration. I like inspiration, but it does nothing for me if I don't act. So the people that I've seen, including my clients who are amazingly successful, are those who have reduced the gap between inspiration and taking action.
That's right on. That's a great way to end it. And what I find out too, once you start taking action, you start getting momentum. And once you get the momentum, it keeps going. And conversely, and I'll say this to my kids all the time, it's like an object in motion stays in motion. And if you don't do anything, you don't even stand still, you go backwards. So I agree wholeheartedly. You got to take action. You got to make it happen. You got to go. And then what's so interesting, and I'm sure you could appreciate this too, then you catch the breaks. It's so interesting. It seems like you're lucky, but you make your own luck by doing things. The more you do things, the more you get out there, the more you try, the more you network, the more you get in touch with people, the more you do things, the more things are going to break your way. And the less that you do it, nothing happens. So I agree with your theory wholeheartedly.
that's why they say it's 99% perspiration
Yeah.
and 1% inspiration.
It's it, just being in the game and keep trying. So I think on a Monday morning, give some great inspiration. And then when people watch it later on in the week too, you're going to make their day because you've really given some really sound, smart, actionable advice. And I really appreciate it. And I think everyone's going to learn a lot from it. And it's so cool because this is what I'm really trying to do with these LinkedIn Lives is that just have people here who have like really good ideas, really good suggestions, really good guidance, and that people could watch them over and over again. Because like this kind of thing, I think someone would have to watch it a few times because you do share so much stuff that it's hard to really absorb. And I'm not saying to flatter you. I'm just I'm being sincere.
Thank
like,
you. You're very right. And I'm not saying this to sound arrogant, but you know what? Funny thing, I have to watch my own live stream sometimes because I can't remember that I said that. I'm like, did I actually say that? So
you should.
We all need to, because it's again, it's like a little hammering the nail. It's not a one and done. It's a little bit every day. And Lauren talks about watering the garden, so nurturing the garden. And that's the way I want to say. But I want to say thank you, Jack, for having me. And
my pleasure. Thank you. This is great. This is fantastic. So thanks and Diane, who asked the question, it was fantastic content. Thank you, Sonal. So excellent. Well, thanks a lot. It was great speaking to you.